live from our Hospital Hill studios in Mbabane, Dolopa. It is the 28th of April, the last Friday of this month, Lungelele. Good morning, a very good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sfiso. I'm very happy it's a Friday. Kalimpela song for a long weekend. Said ukuthi njengoba sithi ukuthi sibize ngama weekend, ma long weekend kulamalanga but njengoba washo last week Sfiso ukuthi thina sithi kahle kahle ema holiday so nje ilanga leli normal siqhubeka siyasebenza but for everyone else out there kutabe kuyi long weekend. It is the first on the 1st of May langa ke leli lelikhulu le May Day, International Labor Day, langa ke leti 70.
Yeah, really excited for the month of May, Lungelele. April, I feel like we've made a significant progress as Kusile Breakfast Show. I think we've served Babugele Makaya with wholesome entertainment and information. We are hoping ukuthi magesicala na inyanga ya May siqhubeka ngalolo nyawo lolu wathanza kakhulu ema long weekend but sicela sinawe lana engabe njengoba umuntu lohlala waskena lama weekend lamathe ku May sitawuba namangaki.
May it's just Labor Day, May Day, and Ascension Day on the 18th of May.
Yeah.
So that's another holiday. There's only 2 holidays, if I'm not mistaken. Yes.
Important
And that's just you are
days.
born again August. August la manyama holiday. Holiday lemhlanga. Oh no, July 22nd. Yeah.
July for
July
sure,
22nd.
Yeah, but going tinzabeni tema long weekend sibuya nje nyangeni ya April. Nyanga April had a lot of, I'd say, fun-filled tema sports, fun-filled weekdays, weekends. Bonamatabi lamaneng lapha ekhaya, abona lamaneng eNgilandi. Even in South Africa, we're anticipating the Soweto Derby very soon. It's a Friday. Things about the imidlalo ke sithi khulumisa kakhulu. Fabrice Msonera will join us later on the show just to unpack imidlalo lebekhona during midweek and as well as kubuka ukuthi ezisa ku weekend ngumaphi ama games lokufuna ukuthi siwagathe. We'll also look at ama log standings. Kwatisa phela ukuthi hey sitibambene ngemancam lapha eTulu almost across all ema log lakhona lapha emhlabeni. Kanti ke nalapha ekhaya siyakhumbula ukuthi kule mpelasonto lesibuya kuyo bekuneMbabane Derby, which was quite an impressive game. We're also looking forward to see ukuthi le mpelasonto lesiya kuyo isiphatheleni.
All right, because it's a Friday, we're keeping things light as few. So we also have in studio the director of Eswatini pageants, Musa Mantinto. At the beginning of the year, the pageant, Eswatini pageants announced that they are reviving old pageants, and also creating new ones to balance gender equality. Mr. and Miss Eswatini, Miss Teen, Miss Little, Miss and Mr. Little Eswatini. So today at 6:30 kuvakabandi ukuthi ama applications about holiday abenganani kubuka ukuthi namuhla yi deadline yokusubmita wona onke ama applications alama pageants omathathu and also sifuna kuva ukuthi ingabe I progress ihamba kanjani ngoba sakhumbulana ukuthi babhalela elibandla lelilungisa Miss Universe Eswatini pageants yabhala ukuthi nayo iyafisa ukuthi imikise nobuhle wethu lapha ekhaya Eswatini ukuthi awungenele lomncintiswano. Sifuna kuva ukuthi ngabe we are accepted as Eswatini noma base decliner lesicelo sethu leso. We'll be speaking to the director after 6 today kuva ukuthi ngabe ahamba kanjani amalungiselelo abo lama competitions like 3.
Yeah, Lulu, I think on another note, it's only right that we mention Gutsi Zimbabwe Sachubega, Transform Africa Summit. It is actually the last day of the Transform Africa Summit. Siyatke Gutsi Silo Semhlaba lapha Gangwane si hambe sajoina lamanye African leaders in kuhlanganisa imibono and how they can continue to transform and reshape Africa as Achubega ati digitalizer ahamba ngelunyawo le umhlaba wonke so uthatha etinzabeni debkwepesha.
All right, it's 4 minutes after 6. Asibahleli timakethe sitawubuya sithathe indzaba tefuthi eSwatini.
Why should we pay our TV license? The content on our local television is actually more up to date. The industry is enhanced.
It is a criminal offense not to pay your TV license and attracts a fine of 500 emalangeni or 6 months imprisonment.
And the industry is definitely blooming, ladies and gentlemen. So that's what we have for you. But we'll be right back just after the break, and we'll give you more of Miss V.
I pay my TV license. That's why I can enjoy the benefits of an enhanced industry and keep track with recent transformation.
Mommy, who pays for a TV license and what are they paying for?
The owners of TV set and a gadget with a tuner like DVD set have to pay.
Pay your TV license at NetBank with the details provided on screen. Or use your cell phone via the mobile money pay. You could also visit your nearest post office and pay there. Pay your TV license via Eswatini Mobile Imali. Any TV device retailer can purchase a license to trade. Pay your TV license and enhance the industry.
Mizuzu lesikhombisa solo igabhenqa insimbi yesithupha solo ibumbene insimbi yesithupha lomhla ekuseni. Phinze sinamukele lihlelweni sinivusele nathi indzaba dalomuhla. Silo inkosi Mswati wesithathu sesicale ngalokho semthethweni lihambo lokuqinisa ubuhlobo emkhathini welive leSwatini kanye nelive leZimbabwe. Ingwenyama isuka edolobheni Victoria Falls yafika edolobheni iHarare. Yaqala ngalokho semthethweni isigamu sesibili selihambo lwayo eveni leZimbabwe. Ingwenyama isingathi inkosikazi Makela Mathebula.
Silo semhlaba ingwenyama eMaswati sifike enhlokodolobha elive leZimbabwe iHarare singethwe inkosikazi Makela Mathebula. Ingwenyama lebe ingenele umhlangano wokuthuthukisa livekati leAfrika kusetshenziswa tebuchwephesha edolobheni iVictoria Falls ibese seyihlonishwa ngumengameli waseZimbabwe Emerson Mnangagwa ngokuthi ayimeme ukuthi iqale isigamu sesibili selihambo lwayo lesi siqinisa ke manje ebuhlobo emkhathisini welive leSwatini nelive leZimbabwe. Imbube emhlaba emukele indvuna yetangephandle eZimbabwe Frederick Shava esikhumulweni setindiza iRobert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport. Ingwenyama eMaswati yemukele ngengoma yesive elive leSwatini kanti lokhu kuhambisana nelisiko lemasotsha lokumukela abaholi i21 gun salute. Silo semhlaba sihlole liphalede lembutho ebetekuvikela iZimbabwe Defence Force. Indvuna yetangephandle ibese seyitfule esilweni semhlaba libandla letindvuna tembuso lebelikadze litomukela yona ingwenyama kulesikhumulo setindiza lesaqanjwa kuhlonishwa lowa kwaba ngumengameli waseZimbabwe Robert Mugabe. Ingwenyama nenkosikazi bemukelwe nangemigidvo emdzabo. Umcimbi wokwamukela silo kulesikhumulo setindiza ubesithombe lesikhomba indlela lesihlonishwa ngayo khona eveni leZimbabwe nakulamanye njeke emave njengoba sijatshulele nasive nebesiphume ngetinkane kutawusemukela. Lubika kwethu Indzabeni ngisandile Makhanya eHarare eZimbabwe.
Silo inkosi imswati wesithathu sitawuvula ngalokusemthethweni umbukiso walonyaka wekuthengiselana eveni leZimbabwe. Lokhu kuvakele ngamengameli waseZimbabwe Emerson Mnangagwa ngesikhathi abambadi inkulumo nesilo semhlaba. Lokhu kulandzela ukuthi ingwenyama icala elihambo lekucinisa buhlobo emkhathini welive leZimbabwe nelive leSwatini.
Akukapheli isikhathi lesidze imbube emhlaba inkosi imswati wesithathu ifikile eveni laseZimbabwe kanti ivele yabe seyiqhubeka nayo imisebenzi. Ingwenyama yemaswati ibonane namengameli Emerson Mnangagwa lo yemukele ngalokusemthethweni kulandzela ukuthi ifike enhlokodolobha elivele eZimbabwe iHarare. Silo semhlaba sithi sibe netinkhulumo letinhle namengameli.
Abantu beZimbabwe nabantu baseSwatini banye simunye. We need to support each other. Etintongana laphana lapha sijabulile kakhulu usemukele kahle umengameli sakile nema agreements ekubuka ukuthi nasifike la eZimbabwe sibukisane ukuthi sasakhe ama agreements lathini emuva store usetela lawo ma agreements kahle kakhulu nemhlangano ube muhle kakhulu uvunyelwene nokunyenda usika kufanele vele kusetshenzwe kubonakala ukuthi omabili ayakhona ukuphumelela.
Imbube emhlaba iphindze yaphawula nake kumhlinywa ngakutemnotho kwelive leZimbabwe yathi ethemba ukuthi lesimo sitawusombululeka njengoba sikhinyabeta iAfrika yonke.
Because we are aware that Zimbabwe is still going through some difficulties as a result of the sanctions which were imposed to this country, which we hope all of us, not just the Kingdom of Eswatini, but the whole of Africa, is looking forward to the day when these particular sanctions would actually be lifted up, because these sanctions are not only hurting the people of Zimbabwe, but they are hurting the whole of Africa. So this was basically the message was to give support and solidarity, and to say that tomorrow I'll be attending the trade fairs. His Excellency has just invited me that, in the trade fair, that's where you showcase what are the products from here. So this will also give us an opportunity to see the more things that you are able to produce here in Zimbabwe, and for us to see what we can trade with.
Mengameli Mnangagwa uthi makhulu emathuba ekukhulisa ubudlelwane belive leSwatini nelive leZimbabwe. Ubeseke somemetela ukuthi isilo semhlaba sitawuvula ngalokusemthethweni umbukiso wethengiselana iZimbabwe International Trade Fair.
Tomorrow we shall go back to Bulawayo and we shall open our international trade fair. Of course, we made it a state visit, and so he's here. We have exchanged our views. Our relations, political relations are excellent, but we felt that it was necessary to upscale our economic trade relations and the human relations between our two countries.
Lubika kwethu Indzabeni ngisandile Makhanya eHarare eZimbabwe.
Inkosikati Makela Ngangaza ithi kuyabonakala futhi kuyavumiseka ukuthi emaswati solo asanakekelana noma tikhathi tishinjile nempilo ishintsha ngenxa yetimo letahlukene. Inkosikati bekadze ikhuluma nayisukumisa ngekwemthetho umkhankaso wekunitha wenhlangano yehospice at home walonyaka esigodlweni ngalozitha.
Inkosikati Makela Ngangaza yasukumisa lo msebenzi wekunitha ngeminyaka wa-2015 ngenhloso yekunakekela labagulako nekubasita ukuthi bafuthumale. Lokungilapho ubese lo msebenzi wendiwa njalo ngeminyaka. Kungako nalonyaka inkosikati usukumise ngalokusemthethweni lo msebenzi esigodlweni kalozitha. Sicubulo salonyaka sithi Compassionate Communities Together for Palliative Care. Ikhuluma kulo msebenzi inkosikati Makela Ngangaza ithe lo msebenzi utawuvuselela buntu bekunakekelana emimangweni.
We are launching this knitting challenge Today, looking forward to more participation from the members of our community and other partners to support our cause and mandate of providing palliative care. As a Maswati, our tradition is to support those that are in need, and we encourage the private sector to also contribute to our programs as Hospice at Home. It is a fact that everyone one day can find himself or herself or a relative being one of the patients that are taken care of by our organization.
Inkosikazi iphindze yaveta ukuthi eMaswati solo ayetama ngayo yonke indlela kunakekelana noma tikhathi tishintsha netimpilo tebantu tiba ngulotishintshako.
This year, we would like to encourage us all to participate under the umbrella imimango lenesihe isanakekela labagulaku nalabagulelaku emakhaya bayo. We appreciate the support from all who have been part of the knitting challenge over the years. Those who have benefited are a living testimony of your love and compassion. We take this time to encourage us all to be part of this event through availing our skills and donating wool so that we keep our clients warm.
Indvuna yetempilo lizinkosi seyithumise inkosikazi ngokuba lihlahlandlela nekukhuthatha eMaswati kulomsebenzi lomgcoka nalomuhle.
Siyabonga Nkosi ukuthi uyachubeka uinspirisha eMaswati ekutheni ubalekile sisinakekelana. Sinakekelane njengoba sijabula kangaka abantwana babelewa, sinakekelane saphekelelana empilweni, sinakekelane kuze kubele ekugcineni. Ngisengaba nelithuba Nkosi ukuthi kube khona nje abantu le ngibadiko laba basedute nami khanze ukuthi sebayagula. Bese ngibita bona labantu abakho Nkosi ukuthi hey asenivele into ngibambisa ngala. Ngamangala ukuthi bagijima kangakanani kanti bathi gijimela ngetimali tabo lama volunteer la khona. Ngisina ngifika ngisiyavusela kulabahlobo bami ngive bathi hawu bebakhona laba bafike basifundisa naku bafike basendela naku bafike basendela naku. Nkosi sibonga lokuthi siyathi ukuthi emhlabeni kunakekelana into lenkulu. Siphile ngoba siphila nebantu siphile sibe bantu ngekuthi sisupportane.
eMaswati solo emenjalo nalenhlangano kusukela yaqala lomsebenzi njengoba nalonyaka aphume ngetinkhani kusekelana kusita lenhlangano ngetintfo letehlukehlukene tekwenta lomsebenzi. Donke tintfo letentiwako noma letakhiwako letfaka ekhatsi tingubo emajezi tikafu tigcoko nemasokisi kuniketwa bona bantfu labatidingako labagulako njalo ebusika. Nakuphela inyanga yendlovulenkhulu kulomnyaka inhlangano yeHospice at Home beyikathe inakekele bantfu labatinkulungwane letintsatfu nemakhulu lasihlanu nemashumi lamabili nakunye 3,521 etintsabeni kubika Pholile Maziya esigodlweni kaLozitha.
Mvunankulu Cleopas Dlamini uthi live leSwatini lingafunza lokunyende ekulimeni ngetebuchwephesha njengoba live leSouth Korea likhicita ngato. Mvunankulu uthi leSouth Korea linenshisekelo yekusebenzisana neleSwatini etinhlangothini tekutsengiselana. Umhlonishwa Mvunankulu bekakhuluma naketfula inkulumo ngelihambo lwakhe emhlanganweni nebetindzaba njengoba bekavakashele even leSouth Korea naseMalaysia.
Uva kokuvakashela emaveni amabili live leSouth Korea kanye nelive leMalaysia, umhlonishwa Mvunankulu Cleopas Dlamini sekabika ngelihambo lwakhe uvetile ukuthi even laseSouth Korea bakhulumisene kanye naMvunankulu wakulela live kokuthi kunesidingo sokuthi live laseSwatini liqinise kusebenzisana nalo lela live ikakhulu etinhlangothini temabhizinisi.
The Prime Minister noted that there was very little by way of trade between Eswatini and South Korea. and he challenged us to identify possible areas of cooperation. Another area which we discussed extensively was in the field of agriculture. As I was saying, South Korea is a very small country geographically, but they have a very advanced production system. They don't do the open, large-scale agriculture that we are accustomed to here. Everything is done in a very scientific kind of way. We then visited Malaysia, where we were able to meet some business people there. This business community, we met infrastructure development people. We even met the companies that are doing tar roads here in Eswatini.
Umhlonishwa Mvunankhulu uthi live lase South Korea liphinze latibophelela ekuthenini lichubeke nekusita live la kaNgwane etinhlangothini letahlukene letfaka ekhatsi tempilo etindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni nginambonga Dube esikhuphe.
Indvuna yetisebenti iphila Buthelezi ithi isadzinga kucolwa kahle ema-regulations latawenta kutsi usebenta umtsetfo lotawelisa kusebenta kwesikhwama semfundzate pheceleti Student Scholarship Revolving Fund. Indvuna beyikhuluma ePhalamende ngesikhatsi indlebe yesikhulu itsingidza umbiko welikomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwelitiko letemafa endlini yabayesikhulu mayelana nalama-regulations.
Nayihlala indlu yabayesikhulu lilunga lePhalamende lenkhundla yakalobamba lomdzala leliphindze libe ngusihlalo welikomiti lelibuke kusebenta kwelitiko letemafa endlini yabayesikhulu. Umhlonishwa Khumalo uthuleke umbiko endlini wacela indlu ukuthi yemukele umbiko mayelana nema-regulations latawelusa kusebenta kwesikhwama lekuthiwa Student Scholarship Revolving Fund.
Losafuna kuthola umfundzate utawuhamba ende le process kodwa iyomfikisa ebhange wona wabona umuntu awufuna imali yekuvula ibhizinisi le bhange lo mntwana nakafuna le mali utawunikwa on the basis kokuthi litiko limhlolile kokuthi lo mntwana ungilophase kahle ufanele nakahamba ele nalabo basebhange batenetisi nasa ukutholile lo mfundzate utaba sebutheni uyakhona kubhadala nasaqedze lokufunza asathole kusebenta.
Indvuna yetisebenti iphila Buthelezi ithi kusesekuningi lekumele ukuthi kucolwe kulama regulations njengoba kwangazuthi ayaphikisana neKing's Order of 1978 lekungiyona order leluse ema-scholarships eveni.
Kuhamba ukuthi le ngasekugcineni kuyawureporta Minister for Labour kwekuthi le timali tisebente njani. Ordinarily kule ndlela lokungayo nyalo le mali ngeke iye ka-Labour ayigavenishwa ngi-Labour head wakhona usebhange lelinga-appointwa ngi-Labour kodwa uthi ngi-Labour lokufuna ukuphendula ngayo.
Sacela nekwekuthi le fund le Mr Speaker ayingabuki kuphela the tertiary nale vocational accommodateke lofuna kuboleka imali yofundzela likhono ula kulesikhwama. This is commendable. We need to move fast ngoba lamaswati ajakelo kuyosebenza.
Ingcweti yetemthetho wesifiso Khumalo ichazile ukuthi umthetho wesisekelo welive leSwatini section 70 ngiwo loniketa emandla ematiko ahulumende bese ke uhulumende ukhipha ke illegal notice lekachazako ke ngayo le legal notice ukuthi litiko ngelitiko litawenda ini kude ematiko angatawutikhanza enda info yinye kepha ke etindzabeni tetimali litiko letemafa ngilona lelinemandla nasahlanganisa lombiko indlu besachubeka nekudzingidza lombiko walelikomiti umbiko uhlanganiswe ngiLington Gule kunasikhumbuzo Dlamini naThemba Shabangu sePhalamende.
Isebenti tembuso Mabulala Maseko ithi inkampani United Holdings ingulenye tinkampani letidlala inzima lebonakalako ekucasheni emaswati ngelizinga lenkampani lethuthuka ngayo. Indvuna ithi noma kunenkinga kweswelakala kwemsebenzi kunesidingo sekuchubeka nekwakha ematfuba lakhonsako. Indvuna beyikhuluma ngesikhatsi lenkampani ibambe umsebenzi wokubuyisela emakhasimende alenkampani lapho bekhomeliswa khona imincintiswano lehlukile.
Ngenhloso yekubonga kwesekelwa sive semaswati inkampani United Holdings
seyethembise kwenwabisa lusito kutawakheka ematfuba emsebenti lamanyenti indvuna yelitiko letisebenti tembuso mabulala maseko itilive noma linetinkinga tekwakhiwa kwemisebenti kepha-ke ngekubambisana kukhona umehluko longaba khona.
Lesikudele lapha umsebenzi omuhle we-United Holdings lapho khona sebane ma-brand lamanengi insurance ngosi abase-limited to burial kepha-ke bayibalile bafaka nalo riot longithandze kakhulu lo mlamleli lo tawuphilisa live leMaswati lo tawukhona nokuthi u-attract ama-investors from outside the borders of the country and from outside Africa bathabete kangwane because laba bake-United Holdings sebalethe i-security.
Umphathi walenkampani i-United Holdings Nelsiwe Dizoza uthi-ke inhloso lenkulu yalenkampani kusita sive noma kunetimo letibucayi.
Customer centricity is our main objective as a company, and it is through your feedback that we will continuously improve. United Holdings and Dupes are sister companies that you would be proud and have ownership of in Eswatini. We are deeply rooted to the Eswatini soils.
Lohambe embili kulo mncintiswano kube nginomfundo Shongwe lotfole linyanyavu lemoto lomshado Chileshe yena utfole ifridge lenetivalo letimbili londiwe kunene yena watfola mabona kudze lomkhulukati kanyeke naJabu Dlamini lotfole iwireless etindzabeni kubika Sondomlangeni nginambonga Dube kaManzini.
Umbuso sewucalile kwetfula tinkhulumo tawo tekugcogcoda bufakazi ecaleni lekubulawa kwa-Victor Gametse. Kulesigaba lesi umbuso uvetele inkantolo ukuthi usho ngani ukuthi umbekwacala siphoshongwe yakalahlwe nguleli cala lekubulala Gametse. Le ndzaba solo ichubeka embiko yelijaji Nkosinathi Maseko.
Umbuso sowutshele inkantolo ukuthi labanye babofakazi bawo bakhonile kuyivetela ukuthi siphoshongwe utsinze kanjani endzabeni yokubulawa kwa-Victor Gametse. Umbuso utshele inkantolo ukuthi awuthi usabuka sijubo salendzaba ubukhumbule bufakazi babofakazi lababobhembe Hlophe, Steve Horton, Mbuso Ncazankosi kanye naSiphiwe Data Ngubane. Umbuso utshele inkantolo ukuthi bufakazi balabofakazi laba baveta ukuthi Shongwe kukhona la kusho kulabanye babo lokuhambisana nekuthi Gametse kufanele abulawe. Umbuso uchazele inkantolo ukuthi Horton wathi Shongwe wamtshela ukuthi akayithanzi indlela Gametse lenta ngayo ebholeni. Umbuso wengete nekuthi Horton watshela inkantolo ukuthi Shongwe wathi sekusele kangaka ngaGametse. Asasho lokhu kuthiwa wakhombisa ngemuno wakhe wekukhomba kanye nesithupha la kusonzeta sakuhlanganisa kuthi usho kangakanani. Kanzi Bhembe naye kuthiwa wahlangana naShongwe lowamtshela ukuthi kukhona lokumele kwendiwe ngaGametse ngetulu kwaloko kuthiwa wathi kufanele abulawe futhi bakhona abantu labalungele kubhadala labangenda lowo msebenzi. Kanzi naHlophe naye kuthiwa watshelwa nguShongwe ukuthi Gametse kumele asuswe. Umbuso utshele inkantolo ukuthi ayinake ukuthi labofakazi laba abanabudlelwane kodwa bonke bakhuluma indvo lekhomba Shongwe. Nakuhlanganiswa lombiko umbuso bewusachubeka nendzaba. Ndzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela enkantolo lenkulu.
Litiko letemabhizinisi nekutsengiselana libuka kabusha umgomo wemasu ekutfutfukisa umnotfo ngekugucula indlela yekusebenta kwemabhizinisi i-industrial policy. Inhloso yaloku kunciphisa linani lebantfu labangasebenti eveni. Loku-ke kutawenteka ngekutsi tinkampani letilapha eveni titsengise imikhicito leyakhiwe yaphelela kunekutsengisa lokusangakhiwa.
Litiko letemabhizinisi nekutsengiselana lithi selibonile ukuthi umnotfo welive leSwatini usime kakhulu emkhicitweni lefana nekutsengisa tigodvo. Leli tiko lithi libone ukuthi nalingagucula noma ke libuke kabusha umgomo wemasu ekutfutfukisa umnotfo ngekugucula indlela yekusebenta kwemabhizinisi ingangeteka imali lengangena emnotfweni welive. Umcondzisi wetekukhicita kuleli tiko Zamamthethwa uchaza ukuthi lokhu kungendeka kanjani.
Mase simuva up ku level chain siyakhona lokho ukuthi sicashe ngiyabekisa bonjinela nabo science labakhona ukuthi bafake baconinge lokho ukuthi konke leli sikhicitayo kusezingeni lelingiko, unlike masibukela ama sectors lawa la ngema primary sectors. So sifise lokho ukuthi sale simuva on to the secondary and middle income earning sectors lapha sitawukhona nokuthi sifake nayi youth unemployment ngoba siyati ukuthi kune youth yethu insha yethu ngaphandle ayicishe ayide imisebenzi.
Litiko lithi nakungaguculwa lo mgomo live lingakhona kuzuza lokwengedekile kunaloku lekutfolako manje emkhicitweni yalo. Etindzabeni Eswatini TV kubika Themkosi Mavimbela nginamuzi Mkhonda ezulwini.
Bantfu labasha labangemantombazane labangemashumi lamatsatfu benkhundla yasembolonjeni babonga inhlangano yaka Compassionate ngekuba bafundzisa emakhono labatawuphilisa ngawo. Lawa ke ngemakhono lafaka ekhatsi gezi kanye neplumbing.
Babulala emabhodlela abantu labasha benkhundla yasembolonjeni enhlanganweni yaka Compassionate ngekubacecesha ngetemakhono. Labantu labasha bathi sebakwati kuhlanganisa tintsambo tagesi kanye nekufaka emaphayiphi emanti etindlini. Thabile Ngwanyane lomunye wabafundzi uthi bayethemba ukuthi nanabo babomake eMaswati atabethemba ukuthi bayokhona kwenda lo msebenzi lo watiwa ngokuthi wentiwa bobabe.
Imisebenzi emafutha kungasiyo emafutha ofana lenda lo msebenzi nathi basikhanda ukuthi siyawenda. Ngiyabonga nje Compassionate lokuthi asinikele lithuba sibamfula abasha siyalidzinga and baningi labalidingako la ngaphandle sekwaba bede imisebenzi. Nathi lokhu sila ngikhola lokuthi nasiphuma nasiceda nyalo ngoba siya graduate lekubo mhla ka4 ngathi nasiphuma nje sitawukhona ukuthi sithole lawo mathuba emsebenzi sisebenze sikhona kondla abatali bethu sikhona kunaka abamfa bethu emakhaya esinabo sikhona kwenta timvo nje emangweni kuze nathi batali bethu bajabule ngathi.
Lensha kubhekeke ukuthi iphothule ngenyanga yenkhwekhweti kulomnyaka losetulu. Umbiko uhlanganiswe ngithembelihle Magushwa embolonjeni.
Umndeni wakaMathenjwa ngephansi kwemphakathi wakashoba enkhundleni yasembolonjeni ucela lusito lwekudla nekwakhelwa luphahla kulandzela ukuthi lo mndeni uphilane lilunga lemndeni leliphathekile. Lokwenteka ukuthi kuhle kuphela emalanga angakakutholi nalokuya etfonjini kanti ke kumele anathe emaphilisi adokotela lokhu ke kuvetwe ngudzadze wabo Sitani Mathenjwa.
Endzaweni yakashoba enkhundleni yasembolonjeni umndeni wakaMathenjwa ucelela dzadze wabo lusito eziveni. Bongiwe Mathenjwa uneminyaka lengama-33 kanti ungumuntu logulako njengoba aqala ngekumilwa amabhamuta etinyaweni kwase kuba tilonza letihlasela wonke umtimba. Ngekusho kwadzadze wakhe Sitani Mathenjwa,
simo lesikabi kakhulu ngoba kangangoba akakhoni naloku ukhasa ade ayendela eceleni kwakhe njengaloku bucala eyakhasa umbekele ladvutane. Atiphekele nangabe atiphekela nomsonze delela amande naleto timbuphi nyala akasakhoni akasakhasa akasendi lutho so uhlethi lapha lahlethi khona nje udzinga lokuthi umcukule umhambise noma ngabe uyamhambisa uyomgibelisa emotini.
Mathenjwa uthi nendlula lala kuyo Bongiwo ayikho esimeni lesikahle njengoba inetikhala emathayileni inayina imvula iphelela kuye. Lonesifiso sekusita lo mndeni angashayela inombolo lethi 76175769. Umbiko uhlanganiswe ngithembelihle Magushwa kashoba.
Kutemidlalo tingijimi letincane letilishumi tisuke kuleli talibhekisa eveni laseZambia kuyongenela imidlalo yema-African Junior and Youth Championships. Umphathi wenhlangano lengamele inhlangano tetemidlalo Darius Dlomo sekhutsate tingijimi ukuthi tiwuphakamise umjeka welive kule midlalo. Le midlalo itawucala mhla ka-29 kule nyanga lesetulu iphele mhla ka-4 enyangeni letako.
Tingijimi letilishumi tema-juniors setisukile kuleli talibhekisa eveni laseZambia kungenele imidlalo ema-African Junior and Youth Championships khona eLusaka eveni laseZambia. Akavalelisa leli cembu umphathi wenhlangano lengamele tinhlangano tetemidlalo lapha eveni Darius Dlomo ukhumbutele tingijimi ukuthi likusasa lelive emidlalweni ematubane lisetandleni tato.
Athletics in Eswatini is in your hands as you travel.
You see how young they are. So as you travel, you know that you are handling the future of Eswatini athletics. Because these athletes, in a matter of the next 8 years, will be at the Olympic Games. 1 or 2 of them will be at the Olympic Games.
Bheka inkosi ithela lo ngumceceshwa lelikhethelo uchazile ukuthi amalungiselelo ahamba kahle futhi batimisele kumelela live kahle.
Kulabantwana labalishumi kukhona lengikuthembisako noma ngingete ngakuphatha ngesandla kwanyalo ngoba sahamba kodwa nje ngiyathembisa eveni lokuthi nangibabuka labantwana ngemehlo ngiyabona lokuthi nangemsebenzi yabo labayendile bayikhombisa live ngiyabona ngalithembisa lokuthi kukhona sitawubuya nako leZambia.
Karen Tsabetse lo ngikapteni waleqembu uchazile ukuthi imphumela yabo eminyakeni ledlulile akusiyo le bemihle kodwa ke kule midlalo babimisele kuphakamisa umjeke welive.
Promise that stoletha a prize lebambekako, something that will make the country happy. Probably maybe sifike nalo ukuthi kuhlatshelwe i-national anthem.
Nomcebo simelane losebentela inhlangano lengamele inhlangano tetemidlalo utawuhola lelibandla elibhekisa khona eZambia kanzi lemidlalo itawucala mhla ka-29 iphele mhla ka-4 kulenyanga letako. Lobikela umsakade Eswatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini kanzi umbiko uhlanganiswa nguFabrice Msonera. Tithombe ngithemba Shabangu eMbabane.
Likhethelo lesive lemidlalo wesibhakela selibhekise eveni lase-Uzbekistan kuyongenela imidlalo yema-Men World Championships letawucala kule nyanga letako. Kule midlalo live limelelwe nguChawe Gametse, Zweli Dlamini, Thabiso Dlamini kanye naSibonelo Nzimanze. Le midlalo kubhekeke ukuthi icale mhla ka-1 kuya kumhla ka-15 kule nyanga letako.
Likhethelo lesive lemidlalo wesibhakela lakuleli selibhekise eveni lase-Uzbekistan kungenela imidlalo ema-World Championships aphasi kwenhlangano lengamele umdlalo wesibhakela emhlabeni. Kule midlalo live litawumelelwa nguThabiso Dlamini loseveni laseRussia lapho khona achubeka nemalungiselelo emidlalo ema-Olympics eminyaka lotako lapho khona tawusuka khona eRussia alibhekise eveni lase-Uzbekistan. Labanye labasuke lapha eveni nguzweli Dlamini naChawe Gametse naSibonelo Nzimanze. Baqeqeshi lababili labahambena lelikhethelo ngumpendulo Mbingo kanye naPatrick Simelane. Ngekusho kwamengameli wenhlangano edlalisa umdlalo wesibhakela lapha eveni Webster Khele labashayi besibhakela bebachubeka nemalungiselelo emalangeni ledlulile futhi banika live lithemba ukuthi batawumelela kahle live kule midlalo. Lukhele ubonge inhlangano lengamele edlalisa lo mdlalo emhlabeni kunika live leSwatini ithuba lekungenela le midlalo. Le midlalo itawucala kusuka mhla ka-1 kuya kumhla ka-15 kule nyanga letako. Bikela umsakade Eswatini TV kutemidlalo ngilinda Dlamini kanzi umbiko uhlanganiswa nguFabrice Msonera eMbabane.
38 minutes after 6 asifike emaphethelweni etindzaba tetfu lapha ekhaya sibahlola emakethe ngesimo selitulu. Uma sibuya siyaqhubeka nelihlelo ongayinzawo.
Already high food, fertilizer and fuel prices has triggered a global crisis that could drive millions more into extreme poverty, magnifying hunger and malnutrition, while threatening to raise the global humanitarian caseload to new highs and erase hard-won development gains.
Food pricing is our #1 problem right now as a result of all this perfect storm for 2022. But 2023, it very well will be a food availability problem.
What's the one thing that we all have in common? It's food. We need it, we enjoy it, and it brings us together. But right now, accessing affordable and nutritious food is becoming more and more difficult around the world. We've found ourselves living in a global food crisis.
Millions upon millions of people, in fact, 345 million people today are suffering from hunger at a crisis level.
Since early 2022, we at WFP already warned that this would be a year of unprecedented hunger. The pandemic's economic consequences play a huge part in hunger rising to unprecedented levels. At the same time, climate shocks continue to destroy lives, crops, and livelihoods, and undermine people's ability to feed themselves. Meanwhile, conflict keeps waging war on everyday life. As the biggest driver of hunger, currently 60% of the world's hungry live in areas afflicted by violence. In Ukraine, the war has transformed what was the breadbasket of the world into a major humanitarian aid recipient. Before the war began, Ukraine produced enough food to feed 400 million people per year. But when the war started, Ukraine's food exports all but stopped, trapping corn and wheat inside the country.
You know what is really interesting is that our markets for exporting food are highly concentrated. What that means is that less than 10 countries export 80-90% of total exports of crops like wheat, corn, rice, soybean. So when any shock happens to one of these 10 countries or less, we see a disproportionate effect around the world.
It's likely you're already feeling the impact of the crisis, whether that's seeing higher food prices during your weekly shop or finding limited supplies in the supermarket.
Before the war in Ukraine started, prices of food commodities were already at a 10-year high. Prices of fuel commodities were already at a 7-year high. And now on top of that, because of the war, things were not moving as they were supposed to out of the Black Sea. And this is troublesome, not only for the poor countries, but also for rich countries. Look at the United States, 8.5% inflation, hasn't happened in decades. Look at UK, 10.1%. So if our advanced economies are suffering as they are, what to talk of poor net food and fuel importing countries?
When it comes to the world's most vulnerable, the cost of the global food crisis will be counted in lives lost.
Almost every country in the Middle East and North Africa region have been hard hit by the war in Ukraine. This is a region that's highly dependent on food imports, and especially on the imports of grain from Ukraine and from Russia. 30% and more of the grain that comes to this region comes from Ukraine and Russia because of the geographical proximity. There are many countries in the region who have had a big burden in terms of food prices because of the conflict in Ukraine. To give you an example, a country like Syria, food prices have increased by 37% from February till April, and that's since the onset of the conflict.
Even before the global food crisis, some families were already living on the edge.
ما كانت حد تصرفني هيك أبداً. كنت أعمل مكبوس، كنت أعمل زيتون، كانت الأسعار معقولة يعني. الوضع أسوأ لأنه الأسعار كل ما عم ترتفع. يعني ربطة الخبز اللي هي ربطة خبز الشيء الأساسي بالبيت سعرها تغير. هلا كتير شغلات نحن حارمين حالنا منها، مثلا الفواكه ممنوعة، تفتحي برادي فاضي مصفر. هلا ليجي صغير من المدرسة نتغدى وراحت للمساء ليجي بيو من الشغل لحتى نتعشى. وجبتين بنهار.
The global food crisis we're facing is being worsened by the energy crisis and the fertilizer crisis that are also occurring, leaving millions of people at risk of hunger and unable to afford a basic meal.
What we don't want for sure is that today's affordability crisis turns into or becomes tomorrow's availability crisis. What I mean by that is that today, if you have money, you can buy food. But if you don't sort out a few things right now, tomorrow, even if you have money, it won't be enough to buy food. What are those things to sort out? We need to make sure that the next agricultural season is a good one. That requires agricultural inputs, especially fertilizer. And if that doesn't happen, our affordability crisis, which is bad enough as we can see around the world, turns into an availability crisis, meaning that food will be even less affordable for millions upon millions of people around the world. I like to say that when WFP is setting records, that doesn't sound great for the world. In 2020, we assisted about 116 million people. In 2021, we assisted about 128 million people. That's the highest in our 60-year history. And guess what? This year, we're planning to assist between 140 to 150 million people. But in order for that to happen, WFP needs funding because we are voluntarily funded. And two, we always need access. And when we have both of them, we can do the job.
Right now, WFP's response focuses on three key things: providing emergency food and cash assistance and nutrition support to prevent millions from dying of hunger, supporting national social protection systems, and strengthening food systems. It's clear we all need to work together and fast in the face of today's global food crisis.
So artificial intelligence and machine learning give us an incredible opportunity to extract useful information from petabytes of data that are available. And I'll provide three examples about how the Forestry Division is using this approach. The first example, in the Great Green Wall, we have this really important tree called the baobab. It provides fruit, shade, and value for local communities. And we're working with UNCCD to train AI models on the location of baobab trees. This will use drone imagery and basically training a module within FAO's CEPAL cloud computing platform to then predict the location of baobabs across the Great Green Wall countries. This is really critical for local communities that are trying to protect and restore this really valuable resource. The second example is where we are working with US Forest Service and many other partners to develop what we call early warning systems. These systems use artificial intelligence and machine learning to sift through the petabytes of geospatial data that's available to identify rare deforestation events in remote forests. And this is really powerful for governments to then act on possibly illegal deforestation earlier. Previously, it took 2 to 3 months to do this, but now it takes 2 to 3 days. And this is also thanks to high spatial and temporal resolution data coming from Norway's International Forest and Climate Initiative's data program. The third example is the Forest Data Partnership, where we're working with an incredible set of partners such as Google, World Resources Institute, NASA, and Unilever to basically use artificial intelligence and machine learning to extract the best truth from several incompatible geospatial data sets. I mean, this sounds very complicated, and maybe that's where AI and machine learning has its role, is that it can basically allow us to understand useful information from a lot of information. And for this particular case, the Forest Data Partnership, we would like to understand the deforestation footprint of the commodities that we consume. This is really powerful data for consumers. Things like cocoa and chocolate, things like palm, soy, beef. So this 5-year project, the Forest Data Partnership, we would like to have an architecture using AI and machine learning to have the best truth on where the commodities are coming from and their deforestation footprint. So the project really aims to accelerate innovative monitoring for forests and then deploy that to FAO member countries over 5 years, £24.5 million. And we'll be innovating. I'll provide 4 examples of how we're innovating. You know, in the Forestry Division, we're really pioneers of what we call digital public goods with things like CEPAL and Open Forest. These are completely open source digital goods that are widely used by FAO member countries. We'll be strengthening them under this program and deploying them and making them even more useful and accessible. The second innovation is we're going to be using a lot of novel learning methods under this program. We're going to be using online facilitated courses. We're going to be using standalone e-learning to really try and maximize our efficiency in technology transfer and capacity development. I mean, as an example, one of the first activities under the program is an online facilitated course in the use of CEPAL for producing good data, for doing restoration, for restoring your forests. And already we have thousands of government officials enrolled in this, and we'll be running this over a month. And it's really innovative, efficient, and a great way to transfer technology to the FAO member countries. The third innovative approach is we're using what we call a country-led planning process in this program. We're developing this with the Global Forest Observations Initiative, and it's about putting the country in the driving seat on deciding what sort of technical assistance they need, how they need it, and when they need it. So we really want to turn the normal paradigm around. We want the country to tell us what they need, when they need it, how they need it, and we will then support them. We think this is much more effective and will allow the country to be more independent and make better decisions about the technical assistance we're providing. The fourth innovation is all the data, the methods, the outcomes of this project are going to be completely open. This is something that the Forestry Division is a pioneer on. Open data allows all stakeholders to have access to the data, which is critical. It enables transparency, and it just enables a really good practice for a project, because all the information lives on after the project or the program as an open source resource. So through the program, we'll be developing a lot of innovative methods, a lot of innovative data sets, mainly tailored for national governments. But we're really keen to make sure that Indigenous peoples and local communities are also able to use this technology and data for their own purposes. I mean, there's mounting evidence that Indigenous peoples and local communities are the best stewards of their forest. So we want to find a way to use the innovations, the data, to help them monitor their forest area in the most effective way and strengthen their stewardship role, which is already shown to be incredibly effective.
Do you remember the spinning thing? This is us. This picture represents what we did. We were there when coronavirus wreaked havoc in our population. Together with other stakeholders, we formed the first line, controlling the spread of the unknown and unseen enemy of the people. Anxious ourselves, we collected dead bodies countrywide. At the time when no one wanted to come near dead bodies of loved ones, we did care for our fellow citizens. Thank you, the people of Eswatini and teams of first responders.
Asibize sinimukele sikuvusele nawo nasonza kuzivulela isithupha imizuzu le kumele ukuthi shaye ngaphambi kokuthi ishaye insimbi yesikhombisa kulesikhathi sitawubuka simo semgwaco na Constable Ndombendla. Sivusele umdlalo lomhla ekseni ngabe kuhambeka kanjani emigwacweni yelive.
Ngikuvusele Magagula, ngivusele naye umbukeli weBusile Breakfast Show. Imigwaco yelive la Kangwane sesihlolile singumbutho wembubene sive, imigwaco leminengi iyahambeka kude lokungakanani lekungamvimba umshayeli kwekuthi afike lapho aphokophele kufika khona. Emadolobha elive ahloliwe nawo siba netemgwaco edolobheni lelikhulu eMbabane lesilapha ekuphumeni eSuperspa atisebenzi nato lesilapha eMangwaneni atisebenzi nato leto ke sesinemalanga vele tingasebenzi nje bashayeli basasebenzisa yona imigwaco yelive la khona siba netemgwaco tingasebenzi khona loyo mgwaco loyo ujinge ube yi-four-way stop bese timotolo tonke tifike tiyema sithi nje asikukhuthate lokho kubo bashayeli basasebenzisa wona umgwaco. Isitaladi lesingisomhlolo road lesisuka khona edolobheni sibheke khona esport solo leso sitaladi leso sivaliwe kulandzela ukuthi sisebenzise imgwaco isawusebenta loyo mgwaco. Umgwaco lomkhulu osuka khona ehekeni laseNgwenya ubheke khona kaManzini lokufaka ekhathi naye eMalagwane uyahambeka kude sikabedo lesikhona nyalo ekuseni. lo munye umgwaqo lesiwuhlolile ngumgwaqo losuka khona kalonhlupheko ubheke khona Esimunye siyanaka kwekuthi lapha kuleli bloho lesitimela ukhanza kwekuthi lapho imoto lona ngabe ihamba ngelitubane lelisetulu ukhanze kwekuthi leyo mshayeli zoba nebulukhuni bekuyilawula leyo moto lo siyakhuthaza nje kubola basebenzisa leyo mgwaqo kwekuthi nabahamba sebatawufika khona lapha ebloheni lesitimela ikakhulukazi nawuqhamuka ngakhona ngalonhlupheko lisitubane lapho asilimitlise kakhulu kwadise phela ukuthi lelo bambi lelo liyingoti kakhulu selisibangele ingoti letinengi nasichubeka nawo lo mgwaqo sibheka khona Esimunye kungaba nje kukhuthatha bona abashayeli ukuthi basashayela lapho abahambe ngelitubane leliphakanyisiwe litubane lekufanele bahambe ngalo lapho ngilelincane kakhulu kwadise phela ukuthi kunetilwane lasendle letikhona lapho letijuba umgwaqo noma ngabe kunini futhi nje asishayele ngekucophelela kanti-ke nawusuka Esimunye ubheka khona emaphiveni kunemaloli lamakhulu lapho lalayisha wona umoba lapha emalambini ukhanza sekajika sekabheka khona emshineni lo kungenta kwekuthi loyo losebenzisa umgwaqo khona lapho nanganganaki kahle angathi khanza ashayisana nawo lawo maloli futhi nje asinakeni kakhulu ikakhulukazi bashayeli abasuka khona Esimunye babheka khona emaphiveni sengephetha nje ethombeni naye umbukeli kungaba nje kukhumbuta bona abashayeli ikakhulukazi bashayeli bemaloli kwekuthi noma ngabe bahamba basuka kumbe enkapaneni yinye noma ngabe bahamba kanye kanye abakugweme lokuthi bese sebalandzelana dudane noma ke sebenta luzenze lwawo lamaloli loko lo bese sekwenta kwekuthi labo labahamba ngesimoto lesincane sebaba nebulukhuni bekuyenza lawo maloli noma ke kuwa overtaker ukhanze kwekuthi sebaphelelwa kubeketela bagcine seba overtaker lapho kungafanele khona ugcine-ke sekwenteka dona tingoti siyakhuthatha nje kwekuthi noma ngabe tisuke tihamba kanye kanye kepha-ke atishiyelane tigaba kwentelwe dona timotolo letincane kwekuthi nato tikhone ukuthi tihambe ngekukhululeka ngale kwaloko thombeni naye umbukeli imigwaqo yelivela kaNgwane iyahambeka ngaphandle nje kwaleti esenkithiso tisikabeto kungaba kufisela yena umbukeli kwisuku loluthe naloluphephile basetawusebenzisa yona imigwaqo yelivela kaNgwane.
Sibonga kakhulu Constable kusiniketa leyo mbiko wesimo somgwaqo lomhla ekuseni kusele umzuzu munye kusishaya insimbi esikhombisa asibathole imakethe sibuye sithathe indaba ngaphandle kwakuleli. Good morning and welcome back. It's a minute after 7. Let's take a look at international news. Reports emerged this week that the Kremlin-linked Wagner group could be supplying weapons to one of the warring parties in conflict in Sudan.
New reports suggest that the Kremlin-backed mercenaries with the Wagner group in Sudan may have offered weapons to one of the two rival Sudanese generals. But as violence rages in the country, high-level U.S. officials have expressed concern that the group's involvement will only worsen the situation.
Obviously, we don't want to see this conflict expand or broaden, and we certainly wouldn't want to see additional firepower brought to bear that will just continue the violence and continue to escalate the tensions.
Two generals are fighting for power. General Abdel Fattah Burhan, head of the armed forces, and General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo or Hemeti, the leader of a paramilitary group known as the Rapid Support Forces. Hemeti traveled to Russia last year and has sought to win support from Wagner.
Hemeti and his rapid support forces are largely in control of the major gold mining regions in Sudan and have very likely been complicit in gold smuggling for years. Thus, the Wagner Group is siding with the party they think is most likely to be able to continue to secure these interests, particularly in opposition to any civilian-led government.
The Wagner Group's history in Sudan dates back to the previous government of Omar al-Bashir. Wagner's leader, Yevgeny Prigozhin, had a close relationship with former autocratic leader al-Bashir. After al-Bashir relinquished power due to a popular uprising, Wagner continued to have a close relationship with the Sudanese military, particularly the paramilitary rapid support forces headed by Hemeti. It's a pattern analysts have seen before.
The Wagner Group does seem to engage with African countries on a pretty predictable sort of pattern. Normally, it starts with the cultivation of elites, or at least a subset of elites, and then that is followed up with a formal military technical agreement between the states. And this could be something like, Russia will supply arms in exchange for concessions that allow them to do mining or other kinds of resource extraction.
Since the fighting began in April, there have been unconfirmed reports saying that the Wagner fighters are supporting the RSF and supplying them with weapons and armor. Russia sees Sudan as a strategic location with vast mineral wealth and are eager to help install a friendly leader, say analysts.
We've seen a lot in recent months about Russia's efforts to gain a port on the Red Sea in Sudan through an official military relationship. And they've signed other official military relationships with other countries in the region.
Wagner's involvement in other parts of the continent like Libya, the Central African Republic, and Mali has in many cases been problematic, says Ben Dalton of New America, a Washington-based think tank.
They've been associated with widespread atrocities. Everywhere they go, you see, civilian deaths and various atrocities. Russia's interests are in extracting the continent's resources so that it can strengthen its own position and build a web to resist sort of international sanctions. They don't really have the interests of Africans at heart.
And as the conflict rages, civilians continue to pay the price.
The World Health Organization said on Wednesday it was assessing the threat posed to public health after fighters in Sudan occupied a national laboratory holding samples of deadly diseases. We are also concerned that those occupying the lab could be accidentally exposed to pathogens stored there. WHO Chief Tedros Adhanom told a press conference in Geneva.
As clashes in Sudan continue, external risks are growing beyond the violence. On Wednesday, the World Health Organization warned of a unique threat after fighters set up base in a national laboratory used for holding samples of deadly diseases.
Technicians no longer have access to their laboratory, which means the lab is no longer able to perform its normal diagnostic and reference function.
The lab currently houses a range of pathogens, including measles, COVID, tuberculosis, cholera, and polio, to name a few. Medical authorities warn that targeting fighters there could result in a leak and potentially catastrophic consequences.
Untrained personnel or untrained individuals in the lab mishandling some of these samples, potentially leading to themselves exposing themselves to those infections is also a risk.
Power cuts have also made it impossible to manage material at the lab, while depleted stocks of blood bags are at risk of spoiling. Sudan's health institutions have been some of the hardest hit since fighting broke out in mid-April. The WHO says up to 61% of all medical facilities in Khartoum have shut, with only 16% operational. Adding to the worry, patients with chronic diseases have been unable to access treatment, while up to 24,000 pregnant Sudanese women are set to give birth in the coming weeks without proper access to maternal care.
Sudan's army and a paramilitary force battled in Khartoum on Thursday, testing U.S. and African efforts to pause a conflict that has turned residential areas into war zones and sent tens of thousands of people fleeing for their lives.
Evacuations continue as the Sudanese generals agree to prolong the fragile ceasefire. These are some of around 2,700 people of various nationalities that Saudi Arabia says it's helped flee from Port Sudan. The The fighting in Khartoum has somewhat eased during the ceasefire, and both the military, led by General Abdel Fattah Burhan, and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces, led by General Mohammed Hamdan Dagalo, said late Thursday that they accepted an extension to this truce, allowing Sudanese and foreigners to continue to try and get to safer areas.
Snipers shooting people on the streets, and it's very difficult to get to the airport, and checkpoints everywhere, and bodies lying on the streets.
Earlier this week, the RSF posted pictures on social media of its troops capturing the headquarters of the Army Reserve Forces. Food supplies in the capital are falling fast, and 60% of pharmacies and medical centres are closed. A power outage has also led to water shortages in many neighbourhoods.
We are here to fix the main power station for Shambat. People are suffering, there's no water.
Meanwhile, in the region of Darfur, the violence worsened on Thursday, with residents reporting armed fighters battling each other and looting shops and homes as the conflict approaches its third week.
The number of victims linked to a suspected starvation cult in Kenya climbed to 98 on Wednesday, as weeping relatives anxiously awaited news of loved ones after investigators unearthed mass graves last week. The discovery of dozens of bodies buried in Shakahola forest near the coastal town of Malindi shocked Kenyans, with cult leader Paul Mackenzie Ntenge accused of driving his followers to death by preaching that starvation was the only path to God.
Stretching over 800 acres, the entire Shakahola forest has become a crime scene. On the ground, detectives and rescuers worked relentlessly to exhume mass graves as the body count kept piling up. Flying in from Nairobi, Kenya's Interior Minister vowed to bring those responsible to justice.
The government of Kenya will do whatever it takes to make sure that we convict Mr. Mackenzie and all those who helped him perpetrate his heinous crimes.
Police began combing the area last week after receiving a tip-off over missing persons, but few were prepared for the horror they would unearth. Dozens of mass graves filled with corpses, all members of the Good News International Church, whose leader Paul Mackenzie Ntenge encouraged his followers to starve to death in order to meet Jesus.
They came and took my sister. They also took her children. We went to find her and got her back home, but she escaped and went back there. We wonder what kind of power they used.
Locals say the cult, which was operating in the depths of the Shakahola forests, even had its own militia to prevent foreigners from intruding.
They had two groups inside their church. One was like security, the other was people who were indoctrinated. We weren't allowed to go in there. There were people with machetes. It was like their army.
Paul Mackenzie Ntenge was arrested twice in the past 6 years over radicalization charges, raising questions over how the cult leader, who surrendered to police during the raid, was able to operate undetected.
Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke to Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky by telephone on Wednesday for the first time since Russia's invasion of Ukraine, fulfilling a long-standing goal of Kyiv, which had publicly sought such talks for months. Zelensky immediately signaled the importance of the chance to open closer relations with Russia's most powerful friend, naming a former cabinet minister as Ukraine's new ambassador to Beijing.
Opening a new line of communication. On Wednesday, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky phoned his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. The pair spoke for nearly an hour, in a first since Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
It was a long and quite rational conversation. It's usually said that such conversations open up opportunities. Now there is an opportunity to give new impetus to relations between Ukraine and China. Of course, an essential part of the conversation is our views on ways to restore a just peace. I presented the Ukrainian peace formula, its specific points. We agreed to continue our communications.
Beijing has long been aligned with Moscow and has refrained from denouncing its invasion. Last month, Xi made a state visit to Russia, a month after it put forward a 12-point peace plan to end the conflict. That was greeted with skepticism by the West, but cautiously welcomed by Kyiv. Xi told Zelensky that he too would send an official to facilitate peace talks, and that negotiation was the only way out.
Dialogue and negotiation is the only viable way out. A nuclear war will produce no winner. We need to seize this opportunity and create favorable conditions for the political settlement of the crisis.
The phone call is seen as a potentially significant development in efforts to end the war. The Kremlin commended China's approach. France said it backed all dialogue aimed at finding peace. The United States welcomed the call, but said it remained to be seen what would come of it.
In a joint meeting of the U.S. Congress on Thursday, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol told American lawmakers the 70-year-old alliance between their countries was stronger than ever. Earlier this week, Yoon and U.S. President Joe Biden agreed to strengthen nuclear cooperation in the face of increasing regional tensions.
South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol capped a successful U.S. visit, marking the decades-long relationship between the two countries with an address to U.S. lawmakers Thursday.
Our alliance was forged 70 years ago to defend Korea's freedom. The alliance has now become a global alliance that safeguards freedom and peace around the world.
Yoon and U.S. President Joe Biden announced the Washington Declaration on Wednesday, agreeing to strengthen nuclear cooperation between the two countries. The South Korean leader telling Congress the agreement should be just the first step.
We need to speed up Korea, the U.S., Japan trilateral security cooperation to counter increasing North Korean nuclear threat.
A Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson criticized the arrangement Thursday.
What the U.S. has done smacks of Cold War mentality and provokes bloc confrontation. It undermines the NPT system and other countries' strategic interests, heightens tensions on the peninsula, and undermines regional peace.
But Yoon told U.S. lawmakers South Korea seeks peace on the peninsula.
There is one regime determined to pursue a wrong path. That is North Korea. The difference is stark between Seoul, that chose freedom and democracy, and Pyongyang, that chose dictatorship and communism.
During his three-day visit to Washington, Yoon emphasized the U.S.-South Korea relationship goes beyond mutual defense. Recognizing the contributions of Americans who served in the Korean War,
Korea will never forget the great American heroes who fought with us to defend freedom.
And the cultural bonds that have bound the countries for centuries, while looking ahead to the future.
Korea and the U.S. are the world's top technological powers, leading innovation and creativity. Together, we will create a great synergy.
Under the Washington Declaration, Seoul will maintain its non-nuclear status and will be involved in discussions about U.S. weapons deployment.
Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro gave testimony at the federal police headquarters on Wednesday about his actions related to the January 8th attacks on government buildings in the capital, Brasilia. 1 week after his leftist successor, Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, took office, Bolsonaro's supporters raided and trashed the buildings of the Supreme Court, Congress, and the Presidential Palace. Hundreds of them are expected to stand trial.
Jair Bolsonaro arriving to face questions at the federal police headquarters over accusations that he incited the rioters that sought the overthrow of his successor, Lula da Silva. Brazil's Prosecutor General said the former president had allegedly encouraged the perpetuation of crimes against the rule of law in the January 8th attack on the Brazilian seats of power. Bolsonaro, who landed back in Brazil at the end of March after 3 months in the US, has denied any involvement.
The former president reiterated in today's statement that he condemned all anti-democratic acts and all acts aimed at creating instability in the democratic order.
The Supreme Court judge granted a request to investigate the far-right leader, citing a video he posted on Facebook 2 days after the riots, which cast doubt over how Lula came to office. Bolsonaro's lawyers say it was a mistake.
This social media post was accidental. In fact, shortly afterwards, 2 or 3 hours later, he was warned and immediately removed the post.
Jair Bolsonaro was in Florida on January 8th, having left the country on December 31st, the day before his successor was sworn in. A week later, thousands of his supporters swarmed the Congress, Supreme Court, and presidential palace in Brasilia, trashing and smashing offices and windows and vandalizing artworks in scenes reminiscent of riots by supporters of Donald Trump. Like his political role model, Bolsonaro never openly conceded defeat after Lula's narrow victory in the presidential elections. He also repeatedly made unfounded claims that sowed doubt about the reliability of Brazil's voting system. Bolsonaro's sworn deposition is a step forward in just one of the investigations targeting him that could make him ineligible for upcoming elections or result in jail time.
President Recep Tayyip Erdogan cancelled another day of appearances due to a stomach bug. His party announced on Wednesday, less than 3 weeks before Turkey's crunch election. Having already cancelled Wednesday's meetings, Erdogan has now also written off his program for Thursday.
It may be his toughest election since 20 years at the helm of Turkish politics. But President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced he'd be cancelling his appearance at planned campaign events after interrupting a television interview due to stomach issues, though he returned to the screen 20 minutes later to apologise.
I had a serious stomach flu. For a while, I wondered if it would be misunderstood if we cancelled the program. We come across sad situations from time to time in our busy working hours, and I ask you and our audience to forgive me.
The cancellation meant Erdogan's vice president appeared in his place in rallies across 3 cities on Wednesday. With less than 3 weeks to go till the election, health issues aren't the only thing plaguing the Turkish president. As opinion polls show his main challenger, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, with a slight lead. The heavy death toll of the February earthquake is also weighing on the campaign, with nearly 60,000 dead, thousands displaced, and criticism about his handling of the response.
We don't really know what happened at the end with their identity cards. A lot of people are still disappeared. We hear that they don't know really how many people die at the end, and for sure this is a matter of concern, something where we'll look into it very specifically.
Erdogan has previously undergone gastrointestinal surgery, and his party dispel rumours surrounding his health, claiming he'll swiftly return to the campaign.
An unusually early heat wave in drought-hit Spain is set to peak on Thursday and Friday, with temperatures expected to break April records in the south of the country. Since Monday, Spain has been enveloped by a mass of warm, dry air from North Africa that has driven up temperatures to levels normally seen in summer and exceptionally high for this time of the year.
The heat is already suffocating. Here in Seville, April is when the traditional feria takes place. Now, it's a month which has also brought extreme temperatures.
It's very hot. We're looking for shade everywhere and looking for water everywhere and looking for a place to go because it's too hot.
This is already unbearable. We're only in April. If this is happening in April, how's it going to be in June? The intense heat wave is unusual at this time of the year. Spain is already grappling with drought after 3 years of high temperatures and little rainfall. Here, a team of scientists is collecting fish from a river which has nearly dried up, before releasing them in a different area where there's more water.
It is foreseeable that we will see massive losses of wildlife if this is not done over the next few weeks or months, due to a combination of low water levels and poor water quality in this section of the Oñar River.
These extreme temperatures could peak on Thursday and Friday at around 40 degrees Celsius. The National Meteorology Agency has also issued fire warnings. From the northeast to the south of Spain, nearly the entire country is on alert. The heatwave is predicted to last until the end of the week.
This month, a widely watched lawsuit over how U.S. cable network Fox News covered former President Donald Trump's false allegations of election rigging in 2020 resulted in the network paying a near-record $787,000 million settlement to avoid a trial.
$787.5 million is what Fox News agreed to pay in a settlement with Dominion Voting Systems this month. The company said the cable news network spread false information about its voting machines and suggested Dominion help rig the 2020 election for a Joe Biden win over Donald Trump.
Fox has admitted to telling lies about Dominion that caused enormous damage to my company, our employees, and the customers that we serve.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump repeatedly said the 2020 election was stolen from him, despite the absence of any evidence to support the claim. And his attorneys said Dominion's voting machines aided that effort, claims which Fox News allowed to be repeated many times on air.
Talking about some massive straight lines up in the vote tallies in the middle of the night after they've supposedly stopped counting. And that's when the Dominion operators went in and injected votes and changed the whole system.
By settling, Fox avoided having its journalists testify after legal discovery revealed their text messages showed that although they privately doubted Trump's claims, they did not publicly say so. In a post-settlement statement, Fox News said, "We acknowledge the court's rulings finding certain claims about Dominion to be false, and we hope that our decision to settle allows the country to move forward from these issues." Will such a large settlement in a defamation case make American news outlets more accountable for reporting the facts? Maybe, say some experts.
It does send a message to other media to be responsible with the people you put on the air and to check the facts that you broadcast or publish.
Others looking for signs of where American journalism is headed are watching to see what happens to one of the network's most watched hosts, Tucker Carlson, who parted ways with the company days after the settlement. Fox and Carlson have not said why he left, nor has Carlson indicated what he plans to do next.
Jerry Springer, the one-time mayor and news anchor whose namesake TV show featured a three-ring circus of dysfunctional families willing to pay all on weekday afternoons, including brawls and blurred images of nudity, died Thursday at 79.
He was the king of trash television. From outrageous arguments to physical confrontations, anything was possible on the Jerry Springer Show.
He can't even be around his family? No, you are not marrying my son.
So it's outrageous, but because it's so crazy, people kind of enjoy it, you know.
He took his first breath in a London tube station during the Blitz. Gerald Norman Springer was born on the 3rd of February 1944 to Jewish refugees from Germany. They had fled to England during the Holocaust. Some of his relatives were killed in Nazi gas chambers. In 1949, when he was just 5 years old, Springer's family emigrated to the United States, settling in Queens, New York. Jerry Springer would go on to earn degrees in political science and law. Soon after, he began a life in politics, serving as mayor of Cincinnati in 1977 and working as an aide to Robert F. Kennedy's ill-fated presidential campaign. But he was always destined for broadcasting. He began his namesake show in 1991. The controversial program that some charged with dumbing down America would go on to make more than 4,000 episodes before ending in 2018.
Jerry Springer will be remembered for being an icon of American popular culture, for perhaps representing the very best and the worst of American popular culture.
Before Donald Trump's political rise from reality TV stardom, Springer considered running for the Senate in 2003, a campaign that he believed could draw on non-traditional voters, but it never materialized. For many, Jerry Springer was ringmaster of a show that was considered one of the worst in television, but whose ratings were undeniably golden.
Scientists at New York University have untangled what they believe is the mystery behind the graying of hair. The discovery offers hope to individuals who spend considerable time and money at hair salons to ward off this evidence of aging. But hair colorists say they don't think they will be put out of business.
It's a hair miracle. Scientists at New York University believe they have identified the mechanisms that cause gray hair, offering hope to people who hate the evidence of aging but are leery of using chemical dyes as a cover-up.
I had been dyeing my hair about every 4 to 6 weeks, and during COVID, more gray came out, and I was kind of letting it go. I feel like it became too much work and time. It wasn't just money, it was being at a salon so often.
This time-consuming and costly process of coloring hair could soon be a thing of the past. New research conducted by scientists at New York University has uncovered a mystery behind the graying of hair. These researchers say hair pigmentation is an active process involving stem cells that travel up and down the hair follicle to produce pigment. As people age, some of the stem cells stop making this journey and become stranded in a small pouch-like area near the top of the hair follicle.
We found that some of the stem cells are stuck in a part of the environment where they're not supposed to be, and in that place they are no longer able to access regeneration signals, so they don't participate in the generation of hair pigmentation.
These stranded stem cells are thought to be responsible for the loss of pigment, leading to the appearance of gray or white hair. Scientists say this research could potentially lead to new treatments for gray hair.
Then one possible application of the study could be to try to mobilize those stuck stem cells to go back to the area where they get access to the signals to produce hair color.
How open are people with gray hair to a medical solution for their issue?
I don't know if I'd immediately take it. I would want to see how it goes for a while and see what the studies show, and if it's safe, possibly I would be into trying it.
Callie Ferrara is a top stylist in New York City. She feels that even with this new discovery, women will continue to want to color their hair.
Women are still going to want to do things to their hair, whether it's cuts, going a different color than their natural, or just like enhancing their look in one way or another.
Ferrara feels this discovery will not have a dramatic impact on the beauty industry.
I don't think that the beauty industry is going to die just because there's something that could possibly keep hair from turning gray.
Even with this hopeful news, it should be noted that this study was conducted on mice, and further research will be needed to determine whether these findings can apply to humans as well.
Ivory Coast is a top African exporter of mango, producing nearly 180,000 tons a year. But wastage is a huge problem, with thousands of tons rotting because of either failure in the supply chain and storage, or because they've just got nowhere to go.
Every day, this mango farmer loses up to 20 buckets of his crop to spoilage. Fruit flies are the bane of his business.
When the flies bite, they infect the fruit. So we have to pick them up. Every year we can lose up to 3 tons of our production.
The unspoiled mangoes go to this processing center in the north of the country for washing and dispatching. Some of them are then exported to Europe, but up to 60% of the mangoes produced in the country goes to waste because it's not processed further.
Now, the main transformation is dried mango, but it remains very insufficient compared to the agricultural potential. There is not yet a developed industry for all the juices, all that is frozen.
There are only 30 processing units to manage the 180,000 tons of mangoes produced in the country annually. There are growing calls to improve supply chain infrastructure.
The seasonality of mango production means the companies cannot operate all year round unless they store the production. So the question is, how can we have storage and keep the raw material to be able to transform it over a whole year? That's one of the main problems that cripples the sector's performance.
Globally, every year, about a third of all food processed is wasted. About 14% of that is lost between harvest and retail. Cutting that back not only helps reduce poverty and hunger, but also the 7% of greenhouse gases currently attributed to food loss.
29 minutes before 8 o'clock, we've come to the end of our international news. Let's take a break. We'll resume shortly with our sports journalist, Fabrice Musanera. For now, let's see with the weather.
Pay your TV license quickly and easily with MTN Momo. Simply dial *007 *3 hash and select option 8 for TV license. Enter your national ID number as your reference and the amount you wish to pay. Then enter your PIN to confirm your payment. Once your payment has been made, you'll receive a confirmation SMS of your payment. If you're a first-time payer, you get another SMS for your TV license. So legalize your entertainment from the comfort of your home. Pay your TV license the easy and convenient way with MTN Momo.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Exactly 35 minutes after 7. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. Good morning again. As Lungelele said, we are with Fabrice Msonera. He's our in-house sports journalist as well as analyst. Fabrice, a very good morning. Always lovely to have you on the show to give us your wonderful insights when it comes to the world of sports. Fabrice, we just came back from a beautiful Sunday, which, you know, all eyes were on Eswatini TV. People were watching Bobane Swallows and Bobane Highlanders for the Bobane Derby. That was an interesting game, but, you know, that is in the past now. Let's talk about, you know, the local weekend fixtures.
In as much as in the past, just we have to pick up to Eswatini TV. I think they came at the point of the members of the public's needs when they needed them. I mean, not everyone from all corners of the country could make that appearance to the Mausa Sports Center. And I think during the course of the week, when you meet people out of there, they're like, you know what, Swazi TV, big up for the job. But then moving to what the story meant for that day, I think it shifted everything in those who have chains for the title this year. In particular, we're talking about Mbabane Swallows. But for that, you know, reason, I will have to take you to that number 3 fixture from the top, Young Buffaloes and Green Mamba. It's another Armed Forces derby. Remember, Young Buffaloes was playing Royal Leopards last weekend when Swallows were playing Highlander. They play one goal draw. That game will define the title for me. Because for now, Green Mamba have actually opened a gap. So a draw in that game, a win in that game, they have a hand on the trophy. For Young Buffaloes, there's no excuse. It's a must win. This is equal to Arsenal and Manchester City.
Well, would you say this is a bigger game than the game that we just came back from?
In terms of the title race, yes, it's bigger. But in terms of the fixture in the country, the one we're from is the bigger game. But in terms of the chances for Young Buffaloes to remain in the race, this is bigger. Remember, I've got only 3 games left. So if they play this game, we've got 2 left. But then also look at this game. In terms of relegation belt, look at Manzini Wanderers against Tabanguru Kellys. We're talking about number 12 and number 13.
Yeah.
So look at, number 1 and number 13, number 11 and number 13. Look at where Wanderers are. They have just actually run away from a bit from the relegation. But make no mistake, because Tambuta,
even though they lost their last game,
Tambuta just behind them. Look at Tabangulu. If they win this game, they are close to. They are close. They are putting pressure to Tambuti. So the battle for the relegation is quite also interesting. But for Seven Dreams, I think, no disrespect to Seven Dreams, I think they are really gone home.
Yeah,
as much as
it's not looking good right
for
now.
the remaining games, it's 9 points. So even if they win all the 3 games, they get 9 points. That's 19.
Yeah.
That it means Tambuti now has to lose all the remaining 3 games, which is highly unlikely possible. Yes. So I think for 7 Dreams, they have to go down. They're actually going down. So we're looking for the second team to accompany them. Now, on top, look at the difference now between number 1 and number 2. It's 4 points.
Yeah.
So if Young Buffaloes draw, it's favoring Green Mamba. So they have to win this game and put pressure, because if they win this game, it's 54. And hope that in the remaining 2 games, Green Mamba could maybe play a draw and they take over. But for Swallows, I mean, maybe I'm sorry to say for the Mbabane Swallows supporters, I don't see how you can overtake. Now, look at the difference between number 1 and number 3. That's 7 points. And there's only 9 points left to play for. So, I think
Mbabane Swallows might as well just, hope for the second position.
Yeah.
But knowing that for Young Buffaloes, it's do or die against Green Mamba,
Yeah.
it's quite tricky for Mbabane Swallows. The odds going into Green Mamba versus Young Buffaloes, I might go with the Young Buffaloes. We're looking at how the odds
it's how they are,
stacked,
because this is the power ship in the game. I want us to touch on the issue of number 1, number 2, before number 1, 2, 3, before maybe we leave. Is that number 1? Remember, we have got only one local tournament. So number 1, the champion, automatically he plays the CAF Champions League. Then the number 2 plays CAF Confederation. So for Swallows, now the only chance now left is to say we've lost the trophy, we've lost the chase, but we can still hope for the CAF Confederation. So if they win, they jump to 51 and hope that Green Mamba defeat Young Buffaloes.
Yeah, because if they draw, they're still better off. Young Buffaloes is still better.
Yeah, it's still better, in terms of the CAF Confederation. And then remember, locally we don't look at the goal difference. We look at head-to-head. How did we play, you and I? In 2 games they played, the first game they played a draw, not. The second game they play 1-1. So Mbabane Swallows has an advantage. Because when
should Young Buffaloes lose?
Yes. So when they played the 1-1 between Young Buffaloes and Mbabane Swallows, Mbabane Swallows was visiting.
Right.
So it makes them in a high position. But let's look at how it's going to be. The remaining 3 games, very crucial to everyone.
Yeah, they're certainly interested in what's going to pan out coming from this weekend. I think Bantu Basemhlume are spoiled to watch that game from the Mhlume Stadium. But also, I just wanted, to commend Linton Gule and Linda Master Dlamini for the commentary, during the weekend. They were really great on that. I want us to go to, the South African midweek results. That's another league that is interesting, even though, the number 1...
I would love that we talk about... Dupre's goal yesterday, Kaizer Chiefs against Chupa United. I think the goal that he scored against Chupa United, in as much as they put them in the top 4 now, it could be contested for maybe one of the goals
of the season.
For those who watch the game, they will know how he curved that ball and everything. But look at the results. Swallows against Maritzburg. I think it was quite entertaining. Sundowns, already the champions against Richards Bay. Remember now they are they have reached the knockout stages of the CAF Champions League, and they are still in. So it gives them a chance to weigh their options, to say where are we in terms of the form. But big ups to Chiefs for getting 3 points. In as much as maybe they would love to be number 2, but SuperSport will shortly look at the log. SuperSport also, they're not looking to move in that second position.
Quite interesting. It was a 1-goal week. Everyone won 1-0. It's quite interesting stuff.
You know what? At this point of the season, it is highly unlikely to see many goals, because every team has picked form. Every team now is looking to avoid relegation. There is targets, because some of the tricky teams to play with. For instance, if you're Sundowns, let's say now they're still in the chase for the title, and they haven't. These are some of the tricky games you wouldn't expect, because Richards Bay, they're newly promoted. So you don't come to the game thinking, you know what, I will slash them 5-0. No. And as much as they have won the title, probably they didn't put so much energy in the game. But these games are very tricky, because it's what you don't expect that you get in the game.
That's a tip for all those people that love to bet.
Yeah.
Sports betting, it's always going to be 1 goal or a draw. So anyway, hopefully they can show us the graphic for the log standings. I'm really interested, to discuss the position of Kaizer Chiefs and SuperSport United.
We've talked about it, and remember my words when I said I don't see the remaining games. I don't see SuperSport leaving that position easily. With Chiefs, of course, 4th, Pirates the 3rd. It's a tricky one, but those 3 teams I like the fighting spirit. Look at how far Cape Town City is, close to 9 points. 9 points behind
Pirates
top
with a
4.
game in hand, that's an advantage for them.
Yeah, it is an advantage for them. But remember, in South Africa, it's all about two things. It's all about top 8 for the MTN 8, and it's also about CAF Champions League and CAF Confederation. So in South Africa, they have that advantage where they can send 3 teams into the CAF competitions.
Yeah, but still, they want to be comfortable. I think position 2 is better than position 3. If you're talking about sending 3 teams,
yes.
Position 2 is, almost a certain kind of position, as opposed to position 3, where Kaizer Chiefs could easily topple number 3.
It's a pity because the derby has been played, but how interesting it was going to be in terms of that position, finishing number 3.
Yeah.
They are on 3rd position. Yes, they have a game in hand, Pirates, but you can't really maintain how sure they'll finish. But look at another tight fixture, talking about how things are standing at Mobera Stadium at the bottom of the screen. They visit TS Galaxy. Another tricky fixture. The Pirates shouldn't go there expecting to get 3 points. But for me, it's the KZN side, Royal M, against Cape Town side. I think it's another interesting fixture. Some of these fixtures, when you watch them, you're after some of the skillful players.
Yeah.
They can interest you. They can give you that, drive to say it was good. It was really a good game. Skukuna against Amazulu also. It's another game at the Moses Mabhida Stadium.
Yeah.
Amazulu just want to finish the season strong. Yeah.
Skukuna beat Chiefs, didn't they? Skukuna United.
Skukuna United.
They did. So
coming to the game, you ruin one
high
momentum.
momentum.
They're on high momentum.
But I also want to hold you to what you said. What do you mean Orlando Pirates shouldn't go into this game looking to get 3 points?
There is pressure of trying to maintain that top 3.
Yeah.
So coming to the game, they know how much it means for them. And you remember we just talked about how they have a game in hand, but they shouldn't go thinking it's going to be easy. With TS Galaxy, a team that has got quite an experience
sitting at position.
Yeah, so they know that it's not going to be an easier game.
Yeah.
So they need to get 3 points. They have to.
Yeah.
And in Esprit, some of the places where they have got huge number of supporters, they have to get 3 points.
Yeah, let's talk about the thorniest, league right now in terms of, people don't want to talk about these games, this league in particular, the English Premier League. This week has been shambles, so to speak, and quite disheartening for a lot of fans. And it was so interesting to me to see a lot of, supporters, particularly Chelsea supporters, Manchester United supporters, as well as, other supporters rooting against Arsenal. And I thought, because Manchester City have been winning the league for so many times, people would want to be, rooting for Arsenal. But let's talk about the midweek results, Fabrice.
I think there's nothing much really to highlight on Tuesday at the bottom of the screen. Not only we can never leave behind the performance of Aston Villa. I think when a record actually was highlighted during the midweek is that for the last 20 games, they're the most team to collect more points than Manchester City, than Arsenal. Out of possible 30 points, they have collected 26 points. So maybe just to highlight, the most improved teams in this season, it's Brentford, it's Aston Villa, and Brighton.
Yeah.
Slightly Fulham. So that game really confirmed that Aston Villa, they are back to their, feet. And we know how, when Steven Gerrard left, how things were. But look at Wednesday.
No, but before we move to Wednesday, Fabrice, how can you be remiss and forget to talk about Leeds and Leicester? Because we just came back from talking about, the South African midweek results. And you were quite intentional on highlighting, the relegation battle. Let's talk about Leeds and Leicester. That relegation battle is quite interesting. Yeah.
There's so much going on at Leicester City. I think for me, the Foxes still have a lot of work to do. When Brendan Rodgers was fired, I think he highlighted that there are some internal issues that have to be dealt with. The team hasn't bought really players of the caliber that they're expected to be. Since they won the league, they haven't been relying on specific strikers, particular under Vardy, under Inacho, and the Zambian Daka. So they haven't really brought in items that you would say, this team is threatening. But on a good day, Leicester City with the supporters at home, they're good side against Leeds. These are teams, especially not that maybe have a particular interest. These are teams that you don't want to see being relegated. You talk about Leeds United. These are teams that have got a beautiful record. This is a team that played Champions League, at some point in the early 2000s. So you wouldn't want a team like Leeds, at their crowd full, Al Ahad Stadium, losing and get relegated with a rich history. So that row put them, both of them, in quite in tough position, because a team that they were really competing with. Look at Bournemouth. They won last night against Southampton, which I think Southampton, it's another team, if nothing changes, they could be going down. They are going down, highly possible. So that's a good game. Wolves, Crystal Palace, these are mid-table clubs. Wolves also another slightly improved team. But like I said, Titanic clash was on Wednesday. Log leaders against, runners-up, defending champions and everything. And I think on home soil, you can't really undermine this guy. I think this guy has changed, the latest way of how we see the English Premiership. Remember, I will tell you one thing. When we grew up watching EPL, this is how this guy, under the leadership of Pep Guardiola, has changed football. We don't have now, you don't know what a difference between a number 9 and a number 10 now in the English Premiership, because they change now. Your number 6 are no more tough, and you can have a skinny number 6 who can do the job. But if you look at this guy, what he's done for the club, for him it's not about the number of goals, but if you look at the assist and the timing and when he come to the party, he come to the party when he matters. He's now moved to the third top Manchester City goal scorers. Number 1 being Aguero, number 2 being Yaya Toure, and now he's got also on the list.
Up there.
So he's up there, and he still has got probably 3 or 4 years for him to play. It's not about goals, but for them to win this game, the momentum they have, we know football being football, we can't say Arsenal are out and everything. They could go to Fulham over the weekend and get a draw. It still puts Arsenal in a good position. And then Arsenal play Chelsea on Tuesday. So a lot of things is in
but quite the conundrum for Arsenal, looking at who they are facing next. Even though, Chelsea has been quite inconsistent, especially, they've had a lot of downs as opposed to good games. But I just think, like you've said, it's football. You never know what to expect. Knowing, the history of Arsenal versus Chelsea, when they play head-to-head, it's always it's almost as big as a derby. So certainly looking forward to that game. But
sorry to cut you, Fizz. On home soil, Arsenal have got actually a good record
against Chelsea.
Against Chelsea, because now we're talking about, yes, they're off form. Yes, they have a coach like Lampard. These two have played against each other, Lampard and Arteta. But I'm looking at the games that are left, because if City over the weekend lose against Fulham at the Craven Cottage Stadium or would draw, at this point of the season, anything is possible. They go to Chelsea. They get Chelsea on midweek, Arsenal. So they can try and push that victory. But I think, like I said, some of the games that really are worrying for Arsenal, sorry to forget to mention another improved team, Newcastle United, on home soil, at St. Mary's. I think, it's another Titanic clash for me. They know that they need to keep a pace for the top 3 or top 4. That game for Arsenal against Newcastle.
It's a big game.
If they get 3 points, they're still in the race. If they lose that game, and City actually had won against West Ham, then Arsenal, we can completely say, forget. Just keep thanking God that you made it for the Champions League. Look at some of the tricky games again. Against Brighton, it's another tricky game. They're on form. Nottingham Forest, they're just from defeating Chelsea. It doesn't change much, but the history tells us that Arsenal, whenever they visit Nottingham Forest, they have been struggling. For the past 2 years, during FA Cup, they were defeated by Nottingham Forest. Another team that I would feel bad if they get relegated, their rich history, Nottingham Forest. Majority of people don't know that they have a Champions League.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Before
myself.
it was namely known as Champions League. They have
How
a
long
Champions
ago
League.
was that?
It was in the early 80s,
yeah.
So look at Wolves. It's another game, maybe I would say Arsenal should get 3 points. So for the remaining 5 games, I think the tricky games, it's Newcastle, Brighton. Chelsea, I'm not that much
worried for them.
But look at for City. I think the games that they should be very, very, very careful. A team that really give them a hard time. That game against Everton. Remember, Everton is fighting for relegation. Pep should be worried when they head to Goodson Park. There's a game that also should put them in another worrying position. Chelsea. On home soil, yes, but they could find themselves.
So the title race is still on.
It's still on, but what puts people in really doubt is this games in hand that City have to play starting from this weekend. And of course, as we can see, the title chase is still on. But let's focus on number 3, number 4. We've talked about number 1, number 2. Number 3, number 4. After that draw against Tottenham last night, Manchester United, they've got a game in hand, actually 2 games in hand. But look at the points, 60 points. And they have got Newcastle United with 62 points. They also have a game in hand. So look at down at the bottom of the screen. Everton, they're just below the line. They know that they have to fight their lives. Yeah. History also tells us that Everton is one of the clubs. It's Everton, it's Arsenal. So these are the clubs that have not been relegated since the Premier League was named Premiership. That was in 1990. Arsenal and Everton have never been relegated. So you can also imagine how much it means for Everton to stay in the league. So they have to fight for their lives.
Quite interesting. Particularly interested on, the relegation battle there as well. It's quite sad, man. Like you've said, for Leicester City to be down there with the likes of Everton and Southampton.
Southampton, they make me feel bad because I look at the players they have produced for the past 6 years. Sadio Mane, Virgil van Dijk, Victor Wanyama from Kenya. I will talk about Dembele. These are some of the goodest players that they have produced in the past years.
They've been in the world first 11 for the past 3 years.
Yeah, I think the academy is quite strong. So for them to be relegated, it's quite worrying. But Premier League, they could go down and bounces back.
La Liga, Fabrice, Barcelona, of course, having a run. This year, having a beautiful run, beautiful cadence, sustaining it up there. Real Madrid, how they are playing in the UEFA Champions League, as opposed to, La Liga. You ask yourself, maybe people are right when they say Real Madrid was just made for UEFA, because when you reflect that into, how they are playing, look at that result there against Girona Football Club. That is not the Real Madrid that we watch.
Here's the tricky part. We'll look at the log later on. They're 11 points behind log leaders, Barcelona. Barcelona are 76. They, I think, if I'm not, 65. That loss against Girona, there were comments about the starting lineup and everything. But I think for me, where now Florentino Perez is standing is like, good job, Ancelotti. You've been dominating UEFA. We're doing good. Because priority for Madrid, it's Champions League. Yeah. If you can't give them the Champions League, then you don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Go to City, go to PSG. They want someone now who will bring the same priority. Someone will bring the Champions League. But I think now, Florentino Perez, the president of the club, is moving into the direction is to say, not only do I want to dominate Europe, I just want to dominate everywhere. So let's not make mistake and say he doesn't want the league, because you would say the last time they won the league was when the last season of Zidane. That's 2 to 3 seasons. He feels like, no, we should do something. Yes, the priority is the Champions League, but it feels like, no, we can't do, because there's also competition about the projects that are happening at Barcelona, academy and everything. But he's been very smart also in transfer windows, getting some of the youngest players improving. But that loss confirmed that maybe they should just give totally attention to the UEFA Champions League.
It puts him in quite a funny position, because should City win the UEFA Champions League, then his chances of getting sacked just, they plummet.
Yeah, they're very high, because look at now how there have been also rumors that, they could be, let him go at the end of the season. Yeah. Exactly what I was saying, 11 points behind, and there's only 7 games to go. That's 24 points. Anything can be possible. But Barcelona, they know that they're out of UEFA Champions League, they're out of Europa, they're out of Copa del Rey. That's the only thing they have. Xavi wants to be the first coach in the club's history who came in as a player the first season. You won the league and you won it as a coach as well. Pep did it, but he was, the assistant coach. He was in the group, so he wanted to come as the coach, as the player who won it, and automatically won it as a coach for the first season. So Madrid, look at how they're doing things, but the team that maybe that are loved the improvement. It's number 4 and 5, Real Sociedad, and I think they have quite improved. I think it's the team with the highest numbers of Spanish players in the national team. There are about 4 to 5 players within the starting team of the national team. So it tells you how Real Sociedad have improved. You look at Villarreal also, their performance, they look very, very, very improved. So for Atletico Madrid, it's always the standard, number 2, number 3, they have a chance to qualify for the Champions League. Not really a chance, confirmed situation of qualifying for the UEFA Champions League.
Yeah. That's it for our, sports analysis for the midweek, as well as looking ahead at this coming weekend. Fabrice Msonera, always lovely having you here, giving us your insights when it comes to, the world of football. Thank you so much for coming through. That's a wrap from you.
All right, beautiful stuff. Thank you very much, Sfi. So just for the lovers of those who love athletics, the national championships this weekend, they start at the Maso Sports Center. So it's free. Just go and watch and see how the clubs are doing in terms of athletics. Otherwise, it's a bumper of sporting activities. We can't wait. MTN Premier League. We're talking about the English Premiership. We're talking about other sporting clothes, including swimming. We have teams out of the country. We have juniors in Zambia who will be competing for the Africa Championships. We also have a swimming national team that is in camp in Simunya. So Fabrice, it's all about sports.
Fabrice is very passionate when it comes to, sports. But Fabrice, your time has come to an end. We'll go for a net break. When we return, we'll wrap up the show with Luganele.
Watch local TV on the go with the Eswatini TV app for only 20 emalangeni per month. Do the most with Eswatini TV app. Download from Google Play Store or App Store. We're good together.
Everywhere you go, MTN.
Alright, welcome back. I was Thank you so much for joining us on the show. Next month.
See you next month. Bye-bye.